Okay, you're very welcome back to OTB AM. It's Cameron Hill here. Hope you're having a good morning. Super Value, along with its team of ambassadors and the Gaelic Players Association, hope to encourage Ireland's Gaelic Games community to wear their rainbow laces with pride and show their support for the LGBTQ plus community in Ireland. During the month of June, rainbow laces will be available to purchase in local Super Value stores across the country, with all proceeds going to support Belong to LGBTQ plus Youth Ireland. And I'm delighted to say, as part of it today, a GAA referee and LGBTQ plus advocate, David Gough, joining me. David, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Cameron. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. Can you just explain a bit more about the Pride Laces and the Rainbow Laces initiative and how it came to being and how popular it's been?
So this is Super Value's third year involved in the sponsorship of a D&I campaign in conjunction with the GAA and the championships. Each year they have built upon the campaign, and I'm delighted to say this year has finally culminated in a Rainbow Laces campaign, which was launched just last weekend. It's a hugely important campaign for me because it leads to greater visibility within the GAA. And I suppose on the back of the GAA's decision earlier in the year to prevent Pride and charity organisations from being worn on playing gear, well, boots don't constitute playing gear. So Super Value came up with a wonderful initiative to launch a Rainbow Laces campaign and to bring on board Belong to Youth Services in Dublin as their charity partner. And it's just fantastic that three very distinct and unique organisations within community in Ireland, be that the GAA, Super Value, and Belong to, working with Pride, have launched this initiative to create greater visibility around LGBT players and attitudes within sport in Ireland.
I get on to what you mentioned earlier this year, but on the subject of those sorts of gestures and visibility, we've seen in the past in different sports that it's actually the denial of those aspects and those initiatives that have had the greater power. So thinking back to the Qatar World Cup and the One Love armband, which seemed like something of a meaningless gesture until the authorities didn't want players wearing them at the World Cup. It suddenly takes on a power of its own. So those kinds of gestures and those shows of visibility, do you think they have a big effect?
They have a massive effect, and it was no different than my own attempt to wear a wristband in 2015 at the marriage equality referendum. The refusal of the GAA to allow me to wear that certainly garnered an awful lot more attention around the wristband than ever it would have gotten had I worn it. It was supposed to be a small section of the sports paper in the Sunday Independent the following day, and it ended up on the front page of the main newspaper because it was refused. So we can see clearly that it is their refusal to move with society's morals and values and the way culturally that the country is moving that creates the greater discourse. And that's what happened in Qatar also, when there was such fallout within the World Cup for the refusal to wear the wristbands. That's visibility is key. And I'm hoping that this campaign will grow bigger legs outside in the communities around Ireland, particularly the young people, that will see these laces as the fashion statement for the month of June and will lace up and wear with pride just as much as the intercounty players will throughout the month.
You mentioned that incident earlier in the year. I think you were very frustrated afterwards when Mayo GAA proposed to incorporate the rainbow flag and their jersey numbers, and the GAA refused. I know their take will be that they are an LGBTQ plus friendly community, but those kinds of incidents don't help, do they?
No, they don't. And I was more angry about the GAA statement and the language they used around releasing a statement when they said their jerseys were sacrosanct. And I found something so religious and sacred by Holland Wright as a very frustrating word to use in relation to jerseys. I think what they were trying to say was that their jerseys were a little bit more meaningful to them than to allow them to be tampered with, but it singled out the LGBT community. It was subsequently that they wrote in rules in the association to prevent that type of thing happening, and then as a result of that we see the fallout with the Dylan Quirk Foundation. The GAA is a community-based organisation and has a huge part to play in the social welfare of people around the country, and it has huge social capital, and it should be moving with its grassroots members who want these things to happen. I mean, that was a very generous move by Mayo at the time, to do something so simple, so visible and so meaningful. We had seen it on FAI jerseys. I think they played Canada in the Aviva one time and they had them, and the excuse was used, oh, referees couldn't see numbers. I mean, nobody asked a referee whether they could see the number or not. It was just peddled out as an excuse. So it was difficult to take, but I'm happy to see that, you know, we sat down with SuperValu. I spoke to the girls in SuperValu around the rules, and you said, you know, we can't do anything here. The players will be possibly banned from the association or teams kicked out. However, having read the rules, boots are not part of playing gear. And that's when we came up with the Rainbow Laces idea.
Right, so it's a question sometimes of finding loopholes and getting across.
And there are plenty of loopholes in the GAA.
Yeah, look, as a ref, you know all too well.
Yeah.
I read there was a survey done by News Talk last year, which said that 100% of GAA players would be fine with someone coming out to them. And yet I've heard subsequently that you feel that a lot of players still have that fear about coming out to their teammates, that maybe they just don't feel that comfortable. Why do you think there's that sort of duality?
I don't know if I said that they wouldn't feel coming out to their teammates. I don't think they feel coming out publicly is for them. They are there. They exist within the GAA. I know them. They exist within the League of Ireland as well. But maybe they do not want to be cast into the public spotlight around their sexuality. I know what it's like to have my sexuality plastered on the front page of a newspaper. It's not a pleasant experience. There's also then the issue around, you know, being cast into the spotlight and maybe expected to be a role model and a champion for LGBT issues, when maybe you just might not want to be that person that's expected to carry the mantle for so many others to come afterwards. And it's not a simple answer. There's a lot of factors at play. Each person's journey with their sexuality is personal to themselves, it's their own, and they all have these, you know, different fears and I suppose worries as to what's going to happen when people find out about their sexuality. I've realized nobody really cares. Everyone's busy and involved in their own lives, and they're just happy once you're happy.
And do you feel that, as that survey says, 100% of players would be fine with someone coming out to them? So that feels like a great step forward, given the culture over even maybe 10 years ago, where I don't think that would have been possible. Do you feel that dressing rooms now are a very inclusive space? It's not really that big a deal? Or
I think there's a huge change and shift in the dressing room culture that I would have spoken about very negatively before, particularly at elite level now in GA, which I can speak about. You have all sorts of supports, psychologists, counsellors, mental health coaches, well-being being a huge part of it, and the players now are far more equipped in dealing with that type of a scenario and will be very open to it. They are elite athletes, and they understand that to bring the best out of themselves on any particular day, they need to bring their whole self, and we talk about that at work quite regularly, but their whole self to a game, and I think they're quite open to the idea of, you know, that their colleague sitting beside them could be openly gay, having a relationship with another man, but that doesn't affect who they are or what they do on the football field.
I wanted to bring up the trans community in sport as well. Obviously, that's the T in LGBTQ+, and the trans community in sport haven't had the greatest relationship recently, with lots of associations taking the step to ban trans women from elite female competitions like athletics, swimming, cycling. The RFU have done it. Would you be disappointed if the LGFA and Camogie associations took a similar step?
I don't feel that I will be well versed enough to speak on trans issues. I think that, you know, quite often, and knowing from a referee's point of view, pundits often give opinions on things that they don't really understand to fill airtime. I'm not the right person to speak on transgender issues. Trans people are, and I think they're the ones that need to be involved in that conversation. I do see the controversy around it. I think it's important as role models. We can kind of recognize the influence we can have, but my understanding is that they made that decision based on expert advice. And I think it's important to involve people in sport no matter what their background is.
So then just in a inclusion point of view, just more generally, I've seen people making the case over the last couple of weeks that, sports organizations are all for adopting the rainbow flag into their logos and everything. And yet there is a sizable portion of that community who don't feel represented by sports and feel like those moves marginalize them and ostracize them a bit. What do you feel, given, the journeys that you've been on as a member of the community, how do you think those sporting organizations can incorporate them a bit more and bring them back into the fold?
Well, I suppose it's a little bit more than just incorporating a pride flag or lighting up your stadium in pride colours or flying the flag inside the stadium. There needs to be conversations around inclusivity, but it doesn't need just to happen at top level down. It needs to happen in clubs. And that can be, a manager of an under-14s team watching a 10-minute presentation released by Croke Park on diversity and inclusion, which will give him the ability to sit down with his 13 and 14-year-olds and have a conversation around inclusivity. What do we do when we hear non-inclusive language? What's expected of us? How do we react? And how do we support people who may be going through transitioning or difficulties in coming to terms with their sexuality, and how we support those people? Something simple like that can have a huge knock-on effect, just that these young people feel that they are recognised, that they will be listened to, and that sport will be somewhere where they could exist happily as a member of, in this case, the GAA community and the LGBT community. The Rainbow Laces campaign is a fantastic initiative by SuperValu to raise that awareness and that visibility, in that we're hoping that it will pick up as kind of a great accessory for the young children around the country, that the parents will give them their rainbow laces to lace up their boots and to wear with pride for the month of June. And I think it would add a smile to the members of the GAA communities around the country to see the young people of the country wearing rainbow laces.
Every time we seem to have you on, David, the issue of ref abuse is always in the news. The conversation has probably gotten slightly worse with last month than the Kilkenny referees boycott in response to that threatening letter sent out to a Kilkenny referee. We've talked to you about the assaults in Ballyforan back in September, or in August, I should say, and the assaults on a referee in a Wexford Junior A football match. It feels like it's kind of getting worse. I know last time we had you on, I think you said never has it entered your mind that your physical well-being would be under threat when you're going out to ref. But I mean, 9 months on, is it in the back of your mind now that, gosh, I really hope I make it home in one piece?
It is. It's small there. I tell you, when I felt it most recently was in the Ulster final when I refereed Armagh and Derry. And I don't know whether people can really appreciate what it's like to referee a match like that, to not know whether you've missed something, whether you've potentially caused a problem or a game-changing decision, and you see this flood of people leave the stands and run onto the field. If you're a player, you're going to be lifted up on the shoulders of those people, and they're delighted with what's just happened. But as a referee, you don't know who's going to come in and do something stupid there and hit you or abuse you. I have 4 members of my own family there who at the time I was looking around for as well, because I wanted to make sure they were okay. And that is a little bit frightening. I am not saying I want to see the end of people rushing onto the field. I'm just explaining the motions that I would have in a scenario like that. Do I feel things have gotten better or worse? I'm unsure. I don't see anything personally in my life that would change the way I felt. However, that's not saying that I don't hear the conversations of other referees and speak to them around what's going on in their own counties. It does need to be looked at, and I think it's too simple an answer just to say, oh, Croke Park need to do more. Croke Park are doing the best that they can. People need to sit back and look at themselves and look at their own values and their morals and where they are socially, and it needs a whole cultural change. But I think we need to start looking at the person themselves rather than trying to shift the blame onto Croke Park.
And that certainly seems to be the theme around some of the abuse and the responses to the abuse, not just of referees. We saw a couple of months ago, Lee Chin was subjected to racial abuse at a challenge match between Wexford and Tipperary. So you're absolutely right. And last time you were on, you were talking about how respect, we talk about bringing on respect, and fans and everybody need to be respectful towards players and referees, but that respect is actually this really intangible thing, and no two definitions of respect are the same. The Go Games seems like a great opportunity to instill that in young players, that it's a place where the stakes are a little bit lower, you can train their skills, but also train them to treat the referees with a little bit more dignity and treat them as humans. Is that part of the plan with that initiative?
Well, it should be. I mean, Go Games are supposed to be non-competitive games where every child gets a go. That's the whole idea behind the Go Games, that they are small-sided, that the children get to practice their skills, that they get to learn, that they get to be social and friendly, that there isn't a win-at-all-cost mentality, that there's no pressure put on the child, that there's nobody excluded or being sat on a bench or told you're not good enough to play because you don't have as good a skill set as the person sitting beside you. There's nothing worse than being excluded as a child for games. And I think the Go Games is a wonderful opportunity to instill within the coaches and mentors at that level, the parents, as well as the children, the idea of respect, and respect towards the children playing, who are allowed experience the fun and joy of playing, but also for the referees concerned also, because most of the referees at those levels, particularly in the bigger counties, are from, a young whistlers program. They are the teenagers or the transition year students going out to make 20 quid and enjoy their 30 minutes or 40 minutes of football, where everyone gets to go have a go.
And do you know, have you been or have other referees been consulted in maybe having a module like that in the Go Games? And if not, would you be open to that?
Oh no, I deliver the Young Whistlers program for Coming One School in Dublin, where we train up primary school children to referee the games at half time in Croke Park. And I know there are Young Whistler programs in many of the counties. And probably the most successful one, I think, is ran by Dublin. But I've been involved with the Young Whistlers program in Meath, and it's a fantastically foresightful initiative to get young people involved in refereeing. I mean, the match report cost them €1 to send in, but they're getting €20 for their morning's fun, and that's what it should be. It's supposed to be fun.
Those kind of programs, I know you've said it in the past that a lot of people don't go into refereeing voluntarily, that it's usually someone hasn't turned up and they need someone who kind of understands the rules. But you'd like to see or envision a world where kids are actually doing it because they want to, and that there's enough of an incentive there that you go, actually, I mightn't want to play, but I can still get involved by being a ref, and it's actually an attractive prospect. Is there one thing you think that maybe it's not limited to GAA, but sport in general, do you think there's something that we can do to make that more incentivized and to get more young people involved?
That's a really difficult one, because I'm not sure I've ever thought about that, something to incentivize referees. It's a very difficult job to get into, and you're expected to know the rules at a level far beyond players' managers' knowledge of them. But I mean, a clear pathway, I suppose, is vital at that. If you're a young fella and you're brought to under 14 county squads or trials, I don't know, 16s, and you're put on a divisional squad, south or north, and you're brought onto the county team, that there's a career pathway there for you. And there should be the same within refereeing pathways as well, that there can be a clear pathway that people would understand. I mean, Thomas Gleeson from Dublin, I think, is the best example of that we have. He was a Go Games referee, did the Coming One School primary whistlers, the Go Games within Dublin, and is now refereeing at elite championship level, or certainly within the National League at the moment, and going for elite championship level. And to be able to see someone like that progress from a child right up to an adult referee is fantastic.
I think it's a positive note to end on, David. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. You were Speaking as part of the Wear with Pride Laces initiative for Pride 2023 and during the month of June, rainbow laces will be available to purchase in local SuperValu stores across the country, with all proceeds going to support Belong to LGBTQ plus Youth Ireland. David Gough, GAA referee, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.